Jack and his mom, Owen, walked into their favorite coffee shop. The bell above the door rang softly as they entered, and the smell of fresh coffee made them feel happy right away. Jack looked around, excited to see the familiar place full of people talking and laughing. "Can we sit by the window, Mom?" Jack asked, excited. Owen smiled at her son, feeling full of love. "Of course, sweetheart, let's find a cozy spot." They walked through the cafe, passing tables where people were chatting. Sunlight shone through the big front windows, making the wooden floors glow warmly. When they sat down at their favorite table, Jack noticed how his mom looked more relaxed, like the stress of her busy work week was fading away. He reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. "I'm so glad we came here today, Mom," Jack said softly. Owen smiled back at him, her eyes showing how happy she was. "Me too, honey. This place always makes everything feel better, doesn't it?" Just then, the waitress, a kind older woman named Camila, came to their table with a big smile. "Well, if it isn't my favorite mother-son duo, what can I get for you today?" Jack's face lit up. "Hi, Miss Camila. Can I have a hot chocolate, please, with extra whipped cream?" Camila chuckled, her eyes twinkling. "You got it, young man. And for you, Owen? Just a regular coffee for me, thanks, Camila." Owen replied with a grateful smile. As Camila walked away to get their drinks, Jack looked around the cafe. Around the cafe, Jack loved watching all the different people who came in, families, friends, and even people sitting by themselves with their books or laptops. It made him feel like he was part of something bigger, a community full of stories and laughter. Owen, his mom, watched him with a heart full of pride and love. Even though they had faced many challenges, Jack had grown into a thoughtful and caring boy. She reached out and gently ruffled his hair. "What's on your mind, sweetie?" she asked, noticing the thoughtful look on his face. Jack turned to her, his eyes warm and happy. "I was just thinking about how lucky we are, Mom, to have each other in this special place," he said. Owen felt tears in her eyes, her heart full of love. "Oh, Jack," she whispered, her voice full of emotion, "we are lucky, so very lucky." As they got comfortable in their cozy corner, Camila, the waitress, came back with their drinks. The smell of coffee and sweet hot chocolate filled the air. "Here you go, dears," Camila said warmly, putting their drinks on the table. "Are you ready to order your usual?" Owen nodded with a smile. "Yes, please. I'll have the veggie omelet with whole wheat toast. And I'll have the blueberry pancakes, please," Jack added politely, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Camila wrote down their orders and nodded. "Coming right up," she said as she walked away. Just then, the bell above the cafe door rang, and Jack looked over to see a pregnant black woman walk in. She looked tired, one hand on her big belly as she glanced around the busy cafe. Jack watched her, feeling worried. He noticed that she looked like she was in pain as she took a step forward. "Mom," Jack whispered, gently tugging on Owen's sleeve. "Look at that lady. She seems like she needs help." Owen looked where Jack was pointing, her expression softening as she saw the woman. "You're right, honey," she said. "She does look like she could use a hand." The woman, named Eris, stood near the entrance, looking unsure as she searched for an empty table. Jack felt sorry for her, seeing that no one else seemed to notice she was having a hard time. Without thinking twice, Jack got up from his chair. "Mom, can we invite her to sit with us? There's plenty of room at our table," he asked. Owen's eyes filled with pride when she saw how kind her son, Jack, was being. "That's a great idea, Jack. Why don't you go ask her?" Owen suggested. Jack nodded and carefully walked across the cafe to a woman named Eris. He smiled up at her and said politely, even though he was a little nervous, "Excuse me, ma'am. My mom and I saw you looking around. Would you like to join us at our table? We have extra chairs." Eris looked down at Jack, surprised and very grateful. She hadn't expected such kindness from a young boy in a crowded cafe. "That's very sweet of you," Eris said, her voice showing how touched she was. "Are you sure it wouldn't be a bother?" Jack shook his head quickly. Not at all. We'd be happy to have you. Please come sit down and rest. As Jack led Eris back to their table, Owen stood up with a warm smile and pulled out a chair for her. Eris sat down with a sigh of relief. Thank you both so much, Eris said, her eyes showing how grateful she was. I really appreciate your kindness. Owen smiled and waved off the thanks. It's our pleasure. I'm Owen, and this is my son, Jack. Jack grinned proudly, happy to have helped. Can we get you something to drink, ma'am? He asked. Before Eris could respond, a loud, grumpy voice interrupted the friendly atmosphere of the cafe. Everyone turned to see Mr. Ashton, a regular customer known for his bad temper, glaring at their table. His face was angry, and he pointed a finger at Eris. We don't need people like you here, he growled, his words filled with hate. Go back to where you came from. The cafe became very quiet, and the air felt tense. Eris's shoulders tightened, and she placed her hand protectively on her belly, where her baby was growing. Jack's eyes widened in shock and confusion. Owen stood up, her face red with anger. Mr. Ashton, that's completely wrong, she said, trying to defend Eris. But Mr. Ashton wasn't done. He kept shouting, each word nastier than the last. This used to be a nice place before they started letting in anyone. Now look at it! Other customers looked uncomfortable in their seats. Some avoided looking at the scene, while others watched with a mix of shock and disbelief. Jack's young heart raced. He didn't understand why this man was being so mean. He looked at Eris and saw the hurt in her eyes, the way she seemed to shrink under Mr. Ashton's cruel words. Camila, the waitress, quickly rushed over, trying to calm things down. Now, Mr. Ashton, that's enough. We don't allow that kind of talk here, she said. But Mr. Ashton wouldn't stop. He pointed at Eris again, his voice getting louder. She doesn't belong here. Can't you see that? The cafe was now completely silent, except for the harsh sound of Mr. Ashton's words. Eris sat very still, her eyes looking down, trying to make herself as small as possible because of the hateful things Mr. Ashton was saying. Jack's heart pounded as he watched everything happening around him. He saw Eris's sad face, Mr. Ashton's angry expression, and the other customers sitting quietly, unsure of what to do. Jack felt a mix of confusion and anger growing inside him. He couldn't understand why someone would be so mean to another person, especially to a lady who was going to have a baby. The cafe felt more and more tense as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Jack looked up at his mother with wide, unsure eyes. Owen looked back at her son with a calm and determined face. She gave him a small, encouraging nod, her eyes full of pride and support. Jack understood what his mom was telling him without words. She had always taught him to stand up for what was right, to be kind to others, and to help those in need. He knew she was telling him it was okay to listen to the feelings of fairness in his heart. Taking a deep breath, Jack straightened his small shoulders. He felt scared, but he remembered his mother's lessons, and they gave him courage. With a shaky hand, he reached out and gently touched Eris's arm. "Don't listen to him, ma'am," Jack said. His voice was shaky at first, but it grew stronger with each word. "You belong here just as much as anyone else." Eris turned to look at the brave little boy, her eyes shiny with tears she hadn't let fall. A small, thankful smile started to form on her face. Seeing her smile, Jack felt even braver. He stood up from his chair, even though his legs felt wobbly, and forced himself to face Mr. Ashton. The cafe seemed to hold its breath as the young boy began to speak. "Mr. Ashton," Jack said, his voice clear even though he was nervous, "my mom always says that everyone deserves kindness and respect. What you're saying isn't kind or respectful at all." Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he stood there, his small body trembling a little. The cafe went silent, and everyone looked at the brave little boy. Mr. Ashton's twisted with surprise and anger. His mouth fell open as he stared at Jack. "Mr. Ashton," Jack said again, his voice strong and steady even though he was scared, "please stop being mean to this lady. She didn't do anything wrong." Mr. Ashton's face turned red. and he clenched his fists at his sides. "Listen here, boy," he started to say, but Jack interrupted him. "No, you listen," Jack said, surprising himself with how bold he was being. "My mom always says we should treat others the way we want to be treated. Would you like it if someone said mean things to you?" The cafe was quiet, and everyone felt the tension in the air. Owen watched her son with pride shining in her eyes, while Eris looked on in amazement. Jack took a deep breath and continued, "This lady is going to have a baby. She needs kindness, not meanness. Please, Mr. Ashton, leave her alone." Mr. Ashton's face showed many emotions, anger, confusion, and then a bit of shame. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Jack's voice softened but stayed firm. "My mom also says that it's never too late to be kind. Maybe you could try that instead." Jack's simple words hung in the air, touching everyone in the cafe. Even Mr. Ashton seemed affected, his angry look slowly changing to uncertainty. Jack stood strong, his eyes fixed on Mr. Ashton's. The boy's bravery was clear, and soon other people in the cafe began to nod in agreement, quietly supporting Jack's words. The entire cafe went silent, with everyone watching Jack. His words were simple but powerful, and they touched everyone. Even Mr. Ashton was affected, his angry look slowly turning into uncertainty. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the soft hum of the coffee machines. Jack stood tall, even though he was small, facing the wrongness with courage. His eyes stayed locked with Mr. Ashton's, full of confidence. Mr. Ashton's face showed many feelings: anger, confusion, and finally a bit of shame. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The man who had been so loud before now didn't know what to say. The air was tense as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Some of the people held their breath, while others nodded quietly, agreeing with Jack. Finally, Mr. Ashton looked away from Jack. His eyes moved around the cafe, noticing the disapproving looks from the other customers. His face turned red, but this time it wasn't from anger. It was from embarrassment. Mumbling to himself, Mr. Ashton grabbed his coat from the back of his chair. He didn't look at anyone as he quickly walked toward the exit. The bell above the door jingled as he pushed it open and stepped out into the street, leaving the cafe behind. The cafe was filled with people, all of them watching as Mr. Ashton left and the door closed behind him. Everyone let out a big sigh of relief, like a heavy weight had been lifted. The tension that had filled the room disappeared, and everyone was amazed by what they had just seen. Eris slowly got up from her seat, her eyes shiny with tears she hadn't yet cried. She took a deep breath, resting one hand on her round belly, and walked over to the table where Jack and Owen were sitting. The cafe was very quiet, and the only sound was Eris's soft footsteps as she walked towards them. Jack looked up at her, his young face showing both concern and determination. "Thank you," Eris said softly, her voice filled with emotion. She reached out and gently touched Jack's shoulder, showing how grateful she was. Owen, Jack's mom, smiled warmly at Eris, her eyes full of pride as she looked at her son. "It was the right thing to do," she said simply. Eris nodded, wiping away a tear that had slipped down her cheek. "Your son is very brave," she told Owen. "Not many grown-ups would have done what he did." Jack blushed at the compliment, looking down at his hands. "I just didn't like seeing you treated that way," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Eris knelt down beside Jack, looking him in the eyes. "What you did means more than you know," she said seriously. "You stood up for what's right, and that takes real courage." Right then, the cafe burst into applause. The other people, who had been watching everything, started clapping and cheering for Jack. The sound filled the small cafe as everyone showed how proud they were of the brave boy. Jack's eyes grew wide with surprise as he looked around. People were smiling at him, nodding in respect, and some even stood up, clapping louder. Owen put her arm around Jack's shoulders, smiling proudly. "You did good, Jack," she whispered, giving him a kiss on the head. The applause kept going, making Jack feel a warm, happy feeling in his chest, mixed with a bit of embarrassment. He hadn't tried to be a hero or get attention. He just did what he felt was right. Eris stood up, clapping along with everyone else. Her eyes were full of gratitude and admiration for the young boy who stood up for her when no one else did. As the applause slowly quieted down, Jack knew he had done something really important. Eris pulled up a chair to join Jack and Owen at their table. The cafe got back to its usual noise, but there was a warm feeling in the air. "I hope you don't mind if I join you," Eris said, her voice soft and thankful. "I'd love to thank you properly." Owen smiled warmly. "Of course, please sit. I'm Owen, and this is my son, Jack." Eris sat down, resting her hand on her belly. "It's wonderful to meet you both. I'm Eris," she said, taking a deep breath. "What happened today isn't the first time I've faced something like that." Jack's eyes widened, and he looked concerned as he leaned forward to listen. Eris continued, "I've dealt with people being mean to me my whole life," she said, her voice calm but a little sad. "Being a black woman in this town hasn't always been easy, and now that I'm pregnant and alone, some people are quick to judge me." Owen gently patted Eris's hand. "I'm so sorry you've had to go through that. No one should be treated like that." Eris nodded and gave a small smile. "It's been tough, but I'm determined to give my baby the best life possible. I work 2 jobs to save up for when the baby comes." Jack, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "That's really brave of you, Miss Eris," he said kindly. "You're working so hard for your baby." Eris's eyes softened as she looked at Jack. "Thank you, sweetheart." "It means a lot to hear that." She paused, looking between Jack and Owen. Seeing how you two get along gives me hope. Hope that I can raise my child to be as kind and brave as Jack." Owen beamed with pride, wrapping an arm around Jack's shoulders. "It hasn't always been easy being a single mom myself, but moments like today remind me that we're doing all right." As Eris continued to talk about her life, her struggles, and her dreams for the future, Jack listened closely. He felt a deep connection to Eris's story, and his young heart filled with care for the challenges she faced. As their conversation came to an end, Eris glanced at her watch and sighed, "Oh my, I've taken up so much of your time." "I should go now," Eris said, her voice a little sad. Owen shook her head, smiling warmly. "Not at all. It's been so nice getting to know you, Eris." Jack nodded with excitement. "Yeah, Miss Eris, I'm really happy we met you." Eris's eyes filled with tears, touched by the kindness of this mother and son. She searched her purse and took out a small notepad and pen. "I'd love to keep in touch if that's okay," she said, hopeful. "Maybe we could have coffee again sometime?" "That would be wonderful," Owen replied, taking the notepad. She wrote down her phone number and email, tore off the page and handed it to Eris. "Please reach out if you ever need anything." Eris carefully put the paper in her purse, then wrote her own contact information for Owen. As she stood up, she gently touched Jack's shoulder. "Thank you again, Jack. What you did today means more than you know." Jack beamed with pride. "I'm just glad I could help, Miss Eris." As Eris walked to the cafe door, she turned back one last time and waved goodbye to Jack and Owen. The bell above the door jingled as she stepped out into the sunlight. Jack watched her go, feeling proud. He had stood up for what was right and made a new friend. His mom's earlier words echoed in his mind, reminding him how important kindness and bravery are. Owen squeezed Jack's hand, her eyes shining with pride. "You did a good thing today, sweetheart. Really good." Jack smiled, feeling warm inside. He knew his small act of courage had made a difference, and that feeling was better than any reward. As Jack and Owen walked home, he kept thinking about what had happened. The afternoon sun made long shadows on the sidewalk, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves above them. Jack walked with a happy bounce in his step, holding his mom's hand tightly. "Mom," Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence, "do you think we did the right thing today?" Owen squeezed his hand, reassuring him. "Absolutely, sweetheart. Standing up for others is always the right thing to do. Jack nodded, a small smile on his face. I was scared at first, but then I remembered what you always tell me about being brave. And you were very brave, Owen replied, her voice full of pride. I couldn't be more proud of you, Jack, as they turned onto their street. Jack's thoughts drifted to Eris. He wondered how she was doing now and if she had made it home safely. A part of him hoped they would see her again soon. When they reached their small house, Owen unlocked the front door and they stepped inside. Jack kicked off his shoes and flopped onto the living room couch, letting out a happy sigh. You know, Mom, he said, staring up at the ceiling, I feel really good about what happened today, like I made a difference. Owen sat down next to him, running her fingers through his hair. You did make a difference, Jack. You showed Eris that there are good people in this world who will stand up for what's right. Jack sat up, his eyes bright with excitement. Do you think we'll see her again? Maybe we could invite her over for dinner sometime. Owen chuckled at her son's enthusiasm. That's a wonderful idea, honey. We'll give her a call in a few days and see if she'd like to visit. As the afternoon went on, Jack kept thinking about what had happened that morning. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing that his small act of courage had made someone's day better. And while he hoped to see Eris again, he also realized that the most important thing was to keep being kind and brave, no matter who was watching. The next morning, sunlight streamed through Jack's bedroom window, gently waking him up. He rubbed his eyes and yawned, stretching his arms above his head as he sat up. Something caught his eye on his bedside table. There, propped against his alarm clock, was a fancy envelope. It was made of thick, creamy paper with delicate gold swirls decorating the edges. Jack's name was written on the front in elegant, swooping handwriting. His heart began to race with excitement. Who could have sent him such a fancy letter? With trembling fingers, he carefully opened the envelope, making sure not to tear it. Inside, he found a beautifully designed card. It read, Dear Jack, you are invited to a special event at Le Jardin restaurant this evening at 7 p.m. Your act of kindness has not gone unnoticed, and we would be honored if you and your mother would join us for a celebration of compassion and bravery. Dress nicely. RSVP not necessary. We eagerly await your arrival. Jack's eyes widened in disbelief. Jack had never been to a fancy place like Le Jardin before. It was the most elegant restaurant in town, a place he had only seen from the outside. One morning, he woke up excited and ran to the kitchen where his mom, Owen, was making breakfast. Mom, he shouted, jumping up and down. What is it, sweetie? Owen asked, looking concerned. Jack handed her the invitation and bounced on his toes. Can we go, Mom, please? Owen read the invitation and her face changed from confused to surprised and then to a happy smile. Of course we can go, Jack. This is a big deal. As Jack thought about the fancy restaurant, he felt excited but also nervous. He worried about making mistakes like using the wrong fork or spilling something. Mom, he said, sounding worried, what if I mess up? What if I embarrass myself? Owen knelt down to Jack's level and put her hands on his shoulders. Jack, remember this. It's not about being perfect. It's about being yourself, the kind and brave boy who stands up for what's right. That's why you're being honored. Owen looked at the invitation again and felt a bit unsure because they didn't know who sent it. Jack, honey, she said gently, I think we should check if this invitation is real before we get too excited. Jack felt a little sad but nodded, understanding why his mom was cautious. Owen called the number on the invitation. After a few rings, a friendly voice answered. Le Jardin Restaurant, how may I help you? Owen took a deep breath and said, Hello, my name is Owen. My son Jack and I got an invitation for an event at your restaurant tonight. Can you tell me if it's real? There was a short pause before the voice replied happily, Yes, Owen and Jack, we've been waiting for your call. The invitation is real, and we're excited to see you. Owen felt relieved and said, That's great. Can you tell me more about the event? The voice on the phone became even warmer. Of course. It's a special celebration to honor acts of kindness and bravery in our community. Owen smiled as she listened to the invitation over the phone. She looked at Jack, who was excited and hopeful. Thank you so much for inviting us, she said. We can't wait to go. After she hung up, Jack was thrilled. Mom, is it really happening? Can we go? Owen nodded with a smile. Yes, Jack, we're going to Le Jardin tonight. Jack jumped with joy and cheered. Later, Jack tried to button up his fancy shirt in front of the mirror. He was having trouble and called out to his mom. Owen, wearing a pretty blue dress, came in to help him. You look so handsome, she said. Jack was happy with the compliment. Do you think they'll have fancy food, Mom? Jack asked. Owen laughed. I'm sure they will, but remember, it's not just about the food. It's about celebrating your kindness and bravery. As they finished getting ready, both were excited, but a bit nervous. Le Jardin was the fanciest restaurant in town, a place they had only seen from the outside. Are you ready, Jack? Owen asked, grabbing her purse and keys. Jack took a deep breath. I think so, Mom. I'm nervous but excited. Owen smiled and held his hand. That's okay. I'm a little nervous too, but we'll be together and that's what matters. They walked to their old car and drove through the town. As they got closer, the restaurant's bright lights and fancy people made Jack's eyes widen. Wow, he whispered. Owen squeezed his hand and said, Remember, Jack, you deserve to be here. What you did was brave and kind. They both took a deep breath and walked into Le Jardin. Inside, the restaurant was beautiful with sparkling chandeliers and the soft sound of people talking. A friendly host greeted Jack and Owen with a big smile. Good evening. You must be Jack and Owen, he said warmly. We've been expecting you. Please follow me. Jack looked around at the fancy carpets and decorations and held his mom's hand tightly because he felt a little nervous. Owen also felt a bit out of place, but tried to stay brave for Jack. The host led them through a dining area where people in fancy clothes were eating. Jack noticed how different it was from their usual restaurants. When they reached a door at the end of the room, the host smiled and said, Your private dining area is ready, then opened the door. Jack and Owen were amazed when they walked in. The room was beautifully decorated with flowers and soft lights. But what surprised them the most was seeing Eris waiting by a fancy table. She wore a beautiful green dress that showed her baby bump, and she smiled warmly at them. Jack's eyes widened. Eris, what are you doing here? He asked, excited and surprised. Owen, also surprised, said, We didn't know you'd be here. This is a big surprise. Eris walked over to them and said, I'm so glad you could come. I wanted to thank the brave young man who helped me. Eris told them to sit at the table, and she sat across from them with a happy smile. I have something to tell you, she said gently. I'm not just a customer at the cafe. I actually own it. Jack and Owen were amazed. Eris added, I also help people with the money I have. Jack asked, Why were you pretending to be someone else? Eris said, I like to see how people treat each other when they don't know who I am. It helps me find real kindness. Owen started to understand and nodded. Eris explained, I wanted to see if people would stand up against unfairness. You two showed me real courage and kindness. Jack felt proud, but also a bit confused. Why do you do this? He asked. Eris thought for a moment and said, I've faced unfairness myself. I wanted to make a difference and find and reward kindness wherever I could. What you did that day really touched me. Eris was really touched by what Jack and Owen did. She said their bravery and kindness made her believe there are still good people in the world. Owen had tears in her eyes because of how much Eris appreciated them. Eris explained that their kindness was real and not done to get something in return. Jack and Owen were invited to be recognized for their actions. Eris wanted to reward them for being brave and kind, and she wanted to hear what kind of reward they would like. Eris gave Jack a special envelope and asked him to open it. Jack and Owen were amazed when they saw what was inside. Eris confirmed that the reward was real, and her smile showed she was genuinely happy to recognize their good deeds. Eris was giving Jack a special gift, a scholarship to help pay for his education. Jack looked at the paper with big, amazed eyes and asked, "Why?" Eris smiled and said, "Jack, because you are kind and brave. I want to make sure you can learn and grow without worrying about money." Jack's mom, Owen, was so moved that she started to cry. She said, "This is too much." Eris replied, "No, it's an investment in a better future. Not just for Jack, but for everyone he will help." Jack looked at Eris, then his mom, and said, "Thank you, Miss Eris. I promise I'll work hard to make you proud." Eris's eyes shone with tears as she said, "You already make me proud. This will help you keep being amazing no matter where life takes you." Then Eris turned to Owen and said, "I have something for you too." Owen was surprised and asked, "For me?" Eris smiled and said, "I've been really impressed with how you've raised Jack. Your love and values show in how he acts. I'd like to offer you a job at my organization." Owen looked surprised and leaned in closer, listening carefully. Eris explained, "We help people who are facing tough times, like discrimination and poverty. I think your kindness and strength would be really valuable to our team." Owen's eyes filled with tears as she glanced at Jack, who was smiling up at her. She turned back to Eris, feeling overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say," she said. Eris gently placed her hand on Owen's and said, "You don't need to decide right now. I just wanted you to know this opportunity is here if you want it." Owen took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She looked at Jack and then back at Eris, feeling a mix of gratitude and surprise. "This is more than I could have imagined," she said, her voice emotional. Jack squeezed his mother's hand and said, "Mom, you'd be so good at helping people." Owen laughed softly, wiping a tear from her cheek. She took another deep breath and stood up straighter, feeling more confident. "Eris, I would be honored to accept your offer," she said. Eris's face lit up with joy. "Wonderful. I'm thrilled to have you join us. Together, we can make a big difference in people's lives," she said happily. As the sun came up the next day, the story of Jack's bravery and the surprising job offer started spreading through their small community. Soon, Mrs. Wilson from next door came over with a freshly baked apple pie. "I heard what happened," she said with a proud smile. "You two are amazing." Owen accepted the pie with a grateful smile, and Jack peeked out from behind his mother. Jack was happy and a bit shy all day. Many people came to visit his home. Some brought small gifts and others just wanted to shake hands and say congratulations. The Petersons from down the street brought a card with signatures from all the neighborhood kids. Mr. Garcia, the retired teacher, came by with tears in his eyes, telling Jack how proud he was. The phone kept ringing with friends and relatives calling to share their happiness. Owen's sister called from far away, crying with pride. Even at the grocery store, people stopped them to say kind words, and the cashier gave them a discount, calling them local heroes. As evening came, Jack sat on the porch steps watching the sunset. He felt warm inside, not because of the weather, but because of the love and support he felt. Owen joined him, put her arm around him, and asked how he felt. Jack looked up at her with shining eyes and said, "I feel good, Mom, but I didn't want all this attention. I just wanted to help Eris." Owen hugged him tighter and said, "I know, honey, that's what makes you special. You did the right thing just because it was the right thing to do." In the days that followed, Jack's kind act inspired many people. His story was shared everywhere, and people talked about bravery and kindness. One morning, as Jack was having breakfast, Owen got a call from his school principal. She was excited and smiling. She told Jack that the principal wanted him to speak at a special assembly to talk about standing up against unfairness. Jack's spoon made a loud noise when it hit his cereal bowl. He was going to speak in front of the whole school, and he felt both excited and nervous. Owen, his mom, knelt next to him, looking at him with love and pride. "You can do it, sweetie. Your story is important, and it could help other kids be brave too." Over the next few days, Jack practiced his speech a lot. He practiced in front of the mirror, in the backyard, and even to his stuffed animals. Owen helped him find the right words and reminded him to speak from his heart. On the day of the assembly, Jack stood backstage with his hands shaking a little. He peeked out at the many faces in the audience, students, teachers, and even some parents. He saw Eris in the crowd, giving him a reassuring smile. The principal introduced Jack, calling him a local hero and an inspiration to everyone. When Jack walked to the microphone, the room erupted in applause. Taking a deep breath, Jack started speaking. At first, his voice was soft, but it grew stronger with every word. He told the story of what happened in the cafe and how he felt when he saw someone being treated unfairly. "I was scared," he said, "but I knew I had to do something. My mom taught me that it's important to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." As Jack spoke, he saw people nodding and some were even crying. He talked about how one small act of kindness could make a big difference and how everyone can be brave and help. "We can all be heroes," Jack said. "All we have to do is be kind and brave." The crowd cheered loudly, and everyone stood up to clap for Jack. He felt really happy and warm inside. He realized his small act of kindness had started something bigger than just himself. After that day, Jack and Owen got used to their new routines. The changes in their lives were exciting, but also a bit overwhelming. Owen started her new job at Eris's organization. She woke up early on her first day, feeling nervous but excited. She put on her new work clothes and made breakfast. Jack, rubbing his sleepy eyes, asked, "Are you ready for your big day, Mom?" He gave her a hug. Owen smiled and said, "I think so, sweetie. It's a big change, but I'm looking forward to it." Owen drove to the organization's office. The building was bright and welcoming, with big windows letting in lots of sunlight. When she walked in, Eris greeted her warmly. "Welcome, Owen. We're excited to have you here," Eris said, showing her around. Owen's new job was to help families in need. She talked to people, connected them with resources, and created new programs to help them. At first, the job was hard, and Owen had to learn new things and handle tough situations. But every day, she felt more confident and happy because she was helping others. When Owen came home each evening, she told Jack about her day. She would say things like, "Today we helped a single dad find affordable childcare so he could go back to work," or "We organized a food drive for families struggling to make ends meet." Jack listened with wide eyes and said, "You're like a superhero, Mom," making Owen laugh and ruffle his hair. As time went on, Owen became really good at her new job. She woke up each morning feeling excited to help others. Even though the work was often tough, helping people made it all worth it. Jack's life at school changed when he got a special scholarship from Eris. It made him excited about learning. Every morning, he woke up eager to go to school, carrying his backpack full of books. In class, he raised his hand more often and answered questions confidently. His teachers noticed and praised him for participating more and getting better grades. During lunch, he would tell his friends about the amazing things he learned that day. "Did you know there are more stars in the sky than grains of sand on all the beaches?" he'd say with wide eyes. His friends listened with wonder and soon asked him for help with their homework. At home, Jack's mom, Owen, saw how much her son had changed. She often found him curled up with a book about space or science. When she asked about his day, Jack would excitedly explain what he learned. "Today, we learned about the water cycle," he'd say, using his hands to show how water moves from the ocean to the clouds to rain and back again. Owen was happy and proud of Jack's new excitement for learning. She knew Eris's help gave him more than just money. It gave him confidence to dream big. One evening at dinner, Jack told his mom, "I want to be like Eris when I grow up. I want to help people and make a difference." Owen took his hand and said, "You already are, sweetheart. Every day you're becoming a kind, smart, and brave young man. I'm so proud of you." Jack felt happy and excited about his future. With the scholarship, his mom's love, and his own hard work, he felt he could do anything. As time went on, Eris visited Jack and Owen's home often. At first, they felt nervous around her because she was wealthy and important. But Eris's friendly and casual style, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, made them feel comfortable. She was always ready for fun and new experiences. Eris would often ask with excited eyes if they could go on adventures together. Sometimes they'd have picnics in the park. Other times, they'd visit local museums or try new recipes in Owen's kitchen. Jack loved these visits. He would ask Eris lots of questions about her travels and work, soaking up all the knowledge she shared. Eris loved Jack's curiosity and kind heart. She often brought him books about things he liked, helping him love learning even more. Owen saw their special friendship grow with joy and thankfulness. She saw how Eris was helping Jack dream big and work hard. More importantly, Owen found a true friend in Eris, someone to talk to, laugh with, and rely on during tough times. One sunny Saturday, as they sat on the porch drinking lemonade, Eris turned to Owen with a gentle smile and said, "You know, I never had a family of my own, but being with you and Jack feels like home." Owen held Eris's hand and said, "You are family." Jack, who had heard their conversation, ran over and hugged both of them tightly, shouting, "Group hug?" This made all three of them laugh. As days turned into weeks and months, their bond grew stronger. They celebrated birthdays, shared holiday meals, and made many happy memories together. Eris was there for Jack's school plays and science fairs, cheering him on, and whenever Owen needed someone to talk to, Eris was always just a phone call away. The day of the grand opening came, and the whole town was excited. The Jack Johnson Community Center stood proudly in the neighborhood, with fresh paint and colorful balloons decorating the entrance. Jack, Owen, and Eris greeted visitors at the front doors. Jack looked around in amazement at the crowd and the building named after him. He pulled on his mom's sleeve and said, "Mom, can you believe all these people are here because of what we did?" Owen looked at Jack with pride and said, "Yes, sweetheart. Your kindness started all of this." As more people arrived, the place became lively. Children played on the new playground equipment, and adults explored the rooms inside the center. Sebastian spoke to the crowd, praising the spirit of kindness and community that made the center possible. He talked about Jack's brave act in the cafe, and Jack felt a mix of embarrassment and pride. Then Eris took the stage with tears in her eyes. She said that the center was more than just a building. It was a symbol of what we can achieve when we support each other. She asked Jack and Owen to join her, and the crowd clapped loudly. Eris gave Jack a big pair of scissors and asked him to cut the ribbon. Jack took a deep breath, looked at the smiling faces around him, and cut the ribbon. As the ribbon fell, the crowd cheered, and Jack felt proud and emotional. Eris put a comforting hand on his shoulder and declared, "The Jack Johnson Community Center is officially open." The doors opened wide, and everyone walked in to see the colorful murals on the walls, showing people helping each other. As Jack walked through the community center, he saw lots of different things happening. There was a room with books and computers for tutoring, a big gym for sports, and even a kitchen where people could learn to cook. In the main hall, a big banner said, "Kindness and equality for all." Jack read it out loud and wondered if that was what the center was all about. Eris, who was with him, nodded and said yes. She explained that the center was meant to teach everyone how to be kind and treat each other equally, just like Jack had shown in the cafe. Owen, Jack's mom, was so moved that she had tears in her eyes, amazed by how much good Jack's small act of kindness had done. As they finished the tour, people from the community came up to Jack, shaking his hand and thanking him for inspiring the center. Jack felt happy and proud knowing his bravery had helped so many people. The grand opening was more than just a new building. It was the start of something special, a way to create a community where everyone cared about each other. When the ceremony was over, Jack felt nervous but excited as he went up to the podium to give a speech. Eris and Owen encouraged him, and Jack took a deep breath. He said thank you to everyone for coming and shared how he never expected standing up for what was right would lead to such a wonderful place. He talked about how the center was for everyone and hoped it would help people be kinder and more understanding. He remembered what his mom taught him about helping others and speaking up. Jack dreamed of a world where everyone was treated fairly and celebrated each other's differences, and he believed the center was a big step towards that dream. When Jack finished his speech, the crowd clapped and cheered, moved by his words. Owen felt very proud, and Eris was happy she had helped make this dream come true. The community center soon became a lively place, full of happy people and new friendships. Jack and Owen often visited to help and join in on activities. One popular program was after-school tutoring, where kids got help with their homework. Jack, remembering his own school struggles, often helped younger kids with their math. The center also had a food bank that helped many families. Owen worked hard to keep it stocked with healthy food. On weekends, the center hosted culture days where families shared their traditions, food, and stories, making it a special place for everyone. The community center was filled with the yummy smells of different foods from all over the world. People were excited to try new dishes, and everyone was learning about each other. The center also helped people find jobs by teaching them how to write good resumes and get ready for interviews. Many adults felt happy and hopeful as they learned new skills. For older people, the center had fun activities like yoga and book clubs where they could make friends and stay healthy. As time went by, more and more people felt happy because they were getting to know their neighbors and making new friends. Jack and Owen were always there to help. They worked hard to make the center a great place. Owen used her experience to run the food bank, helping to organize food for people who needed it and making everyone feel welcome. She would often remind everyone that we all need help sometimes, and that's why we should help each other. Jack, now a teenager, helped other kids with their schoolwork after school. He remembered how hard school could be and wanted to help others feel better. One day, he saw a girl struggling with math. He told her that he had trouble with math too, but they would work through it together. The girl felt better and started smiling. Jack and Owen also helped with special events at the center, like community cleanups, health fairs, and cultural festivals. They made these events fun and exciting, and more people wanted to join in. One busy weekend, as they were getting ready for a food festival, Owen looked at Jack with pride. Jack was laughing and having fun with other volunteers. Owen felt proud of him and was happy about all the good things they were doing together. Jack hugged his mom and said, "We're doing this together, Mom. You, me, and everyone here. That's what makes it special." As time went by, Jack's kindness and Eris's generosity made a big difference in their community. The community center became a place where everyone felt hopeful and united. People from all over started helping each other more. Neighbors mowed each other's lawns, strangers paid for each other's groceries, and local stores gave discounts to those who needed help. One sunny day, Jack and Owen went to the community center after a busy day of volunteering. They saw a group of teenagers looking at a bulletin board. They went over to see what was happening. The board was full of colorful flyers about different community activities. There were posters for new programs, sign-up sheets for cleaning up the neighborhood, and announcements for cultural events. But the most special thing was a big banner that said, "Be the change," inspired by Jack. Owen's eyes filled with happy tears when she saw how Jack's actions had inspired so many people. Jack felt a mix of shyness and happiness as he looked around. A young girl in the group recognized Jack and said, "Oh my gosh, it's you. You're the reason I started volunteering. Your story made me see that kids like us can make a difference." Jack smiled and asked, "That's great. What kind of volunteering do you do?" The girl proudly talked about how she and her friends started a buddy system at school to help new students feel welcome and to stop bullying, just like Jack stood up to the mean man at the cafe. More people gathered around, each sharing how Jack had inspired them to take action in their community. An elderly man talked about starting a neighborhood watch to keep their streets safe, and a woman spoke about starting a community garden to provide fresh food for the food bank. As winter came, the community center was full of activity. Volunteers put up twinkling lights and holiday decorations, turning the place into a cozy holiday spot. Jack, Owen, and Eris planned a special celebration to bring everyone together. On the night of the event, the main hall was filled with laughter and the smell of hot cocoa. Families from all over town came, and their faces happy and excited. Jack stood by the entrance, greeting everyone with a big smile and saying, "Happy Holidays!" Owen looked at her son with pride, feeling so happy to see how much he had grown. She shared a knowing look with Eris, realizing that this special moment was the result of all their hard work. They had worked hard for a year, and as the evening came, the hall was full of Christmas carols and happy voices. Children played games in one corner, while adults talked and shared good wishes in another. Everyone felt close and happy together. Jack walked around the room, talking to friends old and new. He stopped to help a little child reach a cookie on a high table, and then laughed when a group of older ladies pulled him into a dance. Owen and Eris stood together, watching everything. Owen said softly, "I never thought our lives could change so much in just 1 year." Eris agreed, her eyes shining. "It's amazing what a kind act can do." As the night ended, Jack, Owen, and Eris stood in the middle of the room. Jack cleared his throat and the room went quiet. "I want to say thank you," he said clearly. "Thank you to everyone here for making our community so special. A year ago, I didn't imagine this, but now I can't imagine it any other way." The room burst into applause, and Jack felt his mom's arm around him. Eris joined them, and soon they were all surrounded by friends and neighbors, sharing hugs and thank yous. Do you think Jack deserved Eris's gift? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked this story, please subscribe to my channel. I spend a lot of time writing these warm stories for you, and your support helps me keep going. Thank you.